you're good.
Okay, let the record reflect that no other business was discussed other than was contained on the agenda. Also, let the record reflect that at 8:21 we reconvened the open session.
All right, 15.1, potential board action to approve the personal consent agenda, which includes Patricia Casey, lunch supervisor at Finley Junior High at $12 an hour, starting retroactively on November 7th.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.2, potential board action to approve an unpaid leave of absence for Colleen Clark, kindergarten teacher at Ridge Lawn, extending a previous board-approved FMLA by 19 days. The new return date would be January 9th, 2023.
I'll make motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.3, potential board action to approve an unpaid leave of absence for Nicole Lacignata, kindergarten teacher at Ridge Lawn, extending a previous board-approved FMLA by 12 days. The new return date would be April 3rd, 2023.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Say up against Easter.
That I'm not 100% sure. It actually is right when we get back from spring break. So, Easter's not for another week or so.
I'll say April 3rd, so.
Yeah.
Is that bump against?
No, that's,
Got another week?
yep.
Oh, that should be off another.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.4, potential board action to approve an hourly pay increase for Tahar Aliter to $17 an hour, parent liaison at Ridge Lawn.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.5, potential board action to increase current lunch supervisor salary to $13 an hour per the Illinois minimum wage law, effective January 1st, 2023.
Make the motion. I'll second the motion.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.6, potential board action to approve a retention bonus of $1,000 for full-time, non-CREA Chicago Ridge School District 127.5 employees and a $500 for part-time, non-CREA Chicago Ridge 127.5 employees who are employed by the district at the end of the 21-22 school year and have continued constant employment with the district through November 8th, 2022. Can we get a motion?
I'll make the motion. Second.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.7, potential board action to approve updated language in the tentative agreement between the Chicago Ridge Education Association and the Board of Education for the collective bargaining agreement for the 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, 25-26, and 26-27 school years.
Make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
15.8, potential board action on resolution releasing closed session minutes and destruction of verbatim recordings 18 months and older.
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Ms. Joy,
Aye.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer,
Aye.
and potential board action for adjournment.
I'll make motion. I'll second.
Mrs. Petropoulos,
Aye.
Mrs. Lebudzick,
Aye.
Mrs. Grove,
Aye.
Mrs. Joy,
Aye.
and Mrs. Salzer.
Aye.
All right,
8:26.
8:26.